Type them up.
Okay.
Thank you,
Dylan is
Mark.
watching enough to be able to do that. That's good. Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So we have. I have a feeling that you all have already done the check-in as I was signing in.
No, we haven't.
Nope.
Does anybody have anything they want to report for a check-in?
I can go. I put in another public records request to the city for the energy usage data for 23 and 24. I think
Thank you.
22 was the last time that anyone looked at that. And we're not getting, I think, much traction from the city doing that themselves. So thought I might just do it.
All right.
Thank you. Good.
And
That's
then
excellent.
tomorrow we are participating in a walking tour of homes that are participating in the backyard habitat certification program in our neighborhood.
Great. Good.
So we'll be
nice.
welcoming people to see the progress that we've made. We're pretty early on in that process, but we put a lot of work in last year and hoping for some good feedback.
Is it focused on West Linn, Mike, or
It's just the neighborhood that we live in.
just the neighborhood you live in?
Yep.
Mike,
yeah,
where
so there's
are
three in Bolton.
Okay.
Yep. So there's three. It'll be 3 houses.
All right. A walking tour of 3 houses in your neighborhood. That's very nice.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
We should,
Yeah.
one of these days, it would be nice if we could speak more broadly about that and finding ways to sort of expand the effort across West Linn. Maybe it's already happening, but part of my retirement project is to convert our yard into one of those, native plant, natural habitat, pollinator, bird friendly, etc. So I'm sort of interested to see what other people are doing.
Rob, you're making me think that maybe we ought to have a walking tour of just the people on our committee.
Yeah.
On the
That would be
woods.
interesting too. Yeah. Right. I know that we do have a potential presentation scheduled in August or September from the folks from Backyard Habitat
Okay.
to hopefully kind of educate more folks in the community about that possibility too. So
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, my yard's mostly native now, and I'm happy to share that walk around with anybody who is interested.
That'd be great.
good.
Wonderful.
Well, I would say we need to check the May minutes, which Dylan sent out to everybody. Right? Dylan? Is he
Dylan?
gone tonight? Yes, he had to he had to
Yeah.
go. Okay. So if there aren't any objections, then I would ask for approval of the minutes.
I'll admit
Move
that
for
I have not
approval.
had time to read them.
Is that true also for you, Rob?
Yeah, it is. I'm looking. Actually, I thought no. I mean, I
Why
haven't
don't we
read.
wait?
Yep.
Yeah, we could push it to next meeting.
You can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although our next meeting is in July, and we don't usually have a meeting in July because we're doing the work for the fair. So that's okay.
Hmm.
Yeah,
We can
I
still do
understand.
it at the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Okay.
All right, so we'll move that forward, and I will send them out separate so that you can get them in a separate email.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. So, Kara, is that how you say your name?
That is well done. Yeah. Well, great to be here. So Victoria, Greg, Rob, and Mike, right? That's who we
Right.
have here. Nice small group. I am here in New Orleans at a conference, so I'm just on my laptop, and I've been talking all day, so you can probably hear my voice is a little cranky. But hopefully you can hear me okay. I just would encourage you to stop me at any point. I am going to share my presentation if I can find it. Here we go. And these are slides that that I put together to help us orient ourselves a little bit. But do please interrupt me if there's anything that would be helpful for you to talk about, especially since we have a small group. Just, I can't see you now because I've got the slideshow up.
Okay.
So that's fine. Just interrupt, Victoria, at any point.
My
If
first
questions were
question
small
is,
enough.
what is the
Yeah.
Green Energy Institute?
Yes, great, Victoria. Yeah, I was just going to tell you. So I'm Kara Saylor, and I'm the director and one of 4 staff attorneys. And we're housed at Lewis and Clark Law School. We're a grant-funded and donor-funded institute. We started out as a policy development, sort of more think tank. And now I think of us as a think and do tank. So we are engaged in utility rate cases, utility planning proceedings at the Public Utility Commission, as well as energy strategies and policy development at the Oregon Department of Energy, and DEQ proceedings as well. And then my background is actually as a lawyer. I started out doing work for cities, counties, and school districts. So I have a municipal law background and have been working with cities on pathways to help their cities breach climate targets, meet their climate action plans, decarbonize buildings. So I've really been doing a lot of strategizing with staff, but also with advocates at a variety of cities around Oregon, and then also in other states that are thinking about what are the ways in which they can help their cities decarbonize. So that's who we are. Does that answer your question?
Just a sideline question,
So-
Kara. Does
Yes,
Dan
yes.
Rolfe
Yeah.
work with you at all?
So he's the clinic director now, again, for Earthrise. And
Okay.
they are mostly natural resources and environmental regulatory processes. So like think Clean Water Act. They don't actually even really do a lot of Clean Air Act work. We're doing more Clean Air Act work than Earthrise does. But we're talking, they're right across the hall, and I'm always thinking about how to get Earthrise involved in some of the work we do.
Great. Good.
Yeah. So this is just a slide to kind of help you get sorted. We will be talking about each of these buckets. I'll start with authorities and then move to the 4 categories of actions that are generally available to local governments. A couple of notes. I'm not going to address the ways in which governments can lead by example. So cities can certainly demonstrate leadership while saving money in the long term by decarbonizing their own buildings. And I'm not going to identify the ways cities can incentivize action. There's value in using all the levers, but voluntary action alone just isn't sufficient to drive down building emissions. So I'll talk about your authorities, I'll talk about right-of-ways, emissions limits, building codes, and pollution fees. So the first thing to know is that cities have a lot of power. The US Constitution provides power to the federal government and to the state governments. Local authority comes from the state. So Oregon's Constitution allows city voters to confer authority on their city governments by enacting a home rule charter, which acts as the city's constitution. And most charters in Oregon give cities the maximum authority allowable by law rather than enumerating specific powers. And so I had a chance to look at Westland's charter right before jumping on this call and confirmed that you have quite capacious authority. So you're authorized to protect public health, safety, morals, and welfare, to license and to tax. The charter typically authorizes that action, as yours does. So the only remaining question is whether a state or federal law takes precedence over the local law. So you can see here that I've got this layer cake where you think about federal, state, and local authority. Sometimes in reality, it's more of a marble cake. But here, it just to sort of think about how do the layers of laws impact what authority you have as a city. You think about the supremacy clause of the US Constitution, which directs that federal law is positioned over state law. And then because a city is a creature of the state, federal law also trumps local law. So you can't have a local law that conflicts with an existing federal law. And that's the same with state law and local governments.
Hey, Kara,
And
Can
then,
I ask a question really
yeah,
quick?
absolutely. Yep, go for it.
Are the next slides coming up for other people? I'm still seeing
yeah,
the
that's what I
very
was just
first
going to ask
slide.
the same thing.
Yeah, I'd say the first one.
That's
Yeah.
You
all I
just
got.
see the use your powers.
Yeah,
Uh,
the legal pathways to restrict, like the
Yeah.
title one.
It's the
So
title
it has-
page.
Oh. Okay. Maybe because, sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
Maybe because I was in, let's see, so from the beginning, then I don't know how to share it.
Well, it was
Let me
sent,
see.
it was sent out to us.
Yeah, so
You can look at it.
I
while-
can just, I can just do this. Does that work? And then you can see 5 ways
Oh,
to think
yes.
local.
Yes,
that
that
works
works.
Yeah, that
fine.
Okay.
that worked.
That
I
does
did
it,
it.
yeah.
And you'll just see my slides at the end here, but that's okay. So
Okay.
this is what I was talking. So here, I'll go back here. These are 5 ways to think local. So we'll talk about your authorities. We'll talk about right of ways, emissions limits, building codes, and pollution fees.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then here's where we were. Got this beautiful picture. I'll just tell you that
There's the
my teenage daughter took many of the pictures that you'll be
Great.
looking at tonight. So
Did she make
that's a
the
little
cake?
nice. She did not bake the cake. I want her to bake the cake. Yeah. So, just to think about what does this mean in terms of using your powers, it means that local governments may manage how, when, and where utilities use public rights of way. So think about your sidewalks, your streets, and they have the authority to act to protect public health and safety. And they have the authority to use existing processes to restrict natural gas use in their jurisdiction, so long as you keep your local authority in mind.
Uh-huh.
So we just were talking about preemption. We were talking about how federal preempts state and local, and then state preempts local. One thing that's important when you think about preemption, and that's a word that you'll hear a lot in this area of law. What does that mean? How do you know if a state or a federal government is preempting a local law? And so for state law, we have pretty narrow preemption. So really, the local government can do a lot. The state law here in Oregon has to clearly and unambiguously preempt the local government from acting. So it'll say something in the statute like the local government is preempted from doing such and such. So very clear preemption. You also could have what's called implied preemption or conflict, where it would be impossible for the local and the state law to operate at the same time. So then the local law would be preempted if the two can't act together. We don't have the flavor of preemption, which you might have heard called occupy the field. So that means like if for example we see it in the federal law, if the federal law is so clearly like in that field of the whatever the thing is that's being regulated, the local law can't go in and regulate that. We don't have that when it comes to state and local governments. So pretty narrow preemption. So here's a picture of the distribution system. I think this is helpful because we don't really think about the gas system, but you can see on this diagram the producing wells, and you can see the line that brings it into the city. And then that green sort of colored circle, that's the distribution system. So that's the local level. That's where the city has control within its city limits about what it can do with those pipes that are under your sidewalks and in your streets. So local governments, as I said, can typically manage how, when, and where utilities use the public right of way. And in West Linn, the city's relationship with the gas utility is managed by the license the gas utility has. But you do have home rule authority as well as statutory authority to preclude fossil fuel piping in the right of way. So you could, for example, adopt an ordinance that precludes or prohibits new fossil fuel piping in your right of way. And you could think about this as like truly climate friendly development. Cities, I'm sure West Linn is considering walkability and transportation options. And so they could also be thinking about the biggest carbon producer, natural gas use. We would want to spend some time with your licensing ordinance. I did not have time to look at it. And we'd want to make sure that the licensing ordinance permits the city to regulate in this way. And it's not always the right option for every city. If you aren't a growing city, for example, or if you don't have a lot of infill development that's going in, this might not be a good solution for you. But I raise it because sometimes it is a good solution if you're expanding it anyway. One thing you might be thinking about is the California Restaurant Association v. Berkeley case. So this was a case that got a lot of headlines. It was an appeal. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued the opinion. 3 Republican appointed judges issued the opinion. And there was a request for a petition, what's called en banc, which is for a larger group of the judges to review the panel decision to make sure it was accurate. That did not get enough votes, but there was a wonderful dissent. But I did just want to call out in the majority decision, you might be thinking about whether precluding new fossil fuel piping in the right of way is going to be problematic when you think about Berkeley banning gas, which that Berkeley decision concluded it could not do. But here you can see the language that I've pulled out, that their holding has nothing to say about a state or local government regulation of a utility's distribution of natural gas. So you have permission to regulate new fossil fuel piping in the right of way. The Berkeley decision was really focused on where piping was already available, right? Where gas is otherwise available. And so if you cannot preclude a home from accessing the gas system if it's already there, but you can preclude the piping from being there in the first place. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on?
I do. I have a question. Can you
Yeah, go for it.
EPCA stands for?
Yes. So that was the federal law. So we talked about federal, state, local, and the layer cake. EPCA is the Energy Policy Conservation Act. And that was the statute, the federal statute that was at issue in the Berkeley case. And the confounding thing is that no one really thought EPCA had anything to do with energy use. It really is about energy efficiency. But the way that panel read the statute, different from how everyone else was interpreting it, really did lead them to the decision where the panel found that Berkeley could not preclude access to the gas system. If they had an appliance that relied on gas and gas was available, the city couldn't preclude access to the gas.
Okay, thank
So
We
you.
all
Kara,
good? Yeah.
Good.
so let me give you an example. So a couple blocks away from us, a rare example of infill in West Linn, big lot that's been empty for a long time and is now being built on, presuming, and I'm sure there's natural gas pipelines to the houses around it. This, as that last line seems to suggest, those folks building that new house would be entitled under this ruling to have natural gas. The city couldn't prohibit them from having it.
Yeah, so great question. So I think everyone's not really sure where the line is. So
Mm.
it's really clear, right, where you have maybe a whole new area of land that's been added to the city limits, and there's no gas. I think there it's pretty clear that the city could say no new fossil fuel piping in the right of way.
Mhm.
It kind of depends here on the city attorney's risk aversion. I mean, the argument could be made that you have the main going down the middle of the street, and the city could preclude the service line from accessing the home.
Huh.
But I think it's a gray area, and it might be hard to encourage the city attorney in
Mhm.
to agree. Yeah, it's a little tricky.
Yeah,
It's a little
interesting.
tricky.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So just to keep on working with that particular idea, the city is developing a waterfront development plan. And
Mm.
there's thought about developing an area that's on a kind of a table below Willamette Falls Drive before the river, that could become like a site for multifamily homes. And so that is completely undeveloped. My guess is that there would be no gas lines there, but that would be the sort of place that a restriction on the building of new gas lines might actually have an impact and
Absolutely. I
be legal.
completely agree.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Again, you're going to get pushback from the city attorney is going to be nervous about it, potentially not knowing the city attorney, but most city attorneys are pretty conservative with a small c. But I think they should feel comfortable, especially given this language.
Mhm.
And particularly, I think along the waterfront where you have sort of additional considerations
Mhm.
in mind for safety. And again, if you're doing it in the context of climate friendly development, it's pretty hard to argue against, you know, a
Yeah.
decision about precluding fossil fuel use. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like your
Yeah.
question, Greg, because it's so specific to what we're thinking about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. 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 And they could zone it in that way, right? Like along with any restrictions they could put in place. And many of the multifamily units that we've heard about anyway, they're not interested in building with gas because it's cheaper to build all electric.
Uh-huh.
So they might not actually even be pushing for gas.
Uh-huh. Good, thanks.
Yeah. So then we move on to pollution emissions. So the Federal Clean Air Act. So we had the federal EPCA, right? Energy Policy Conservation Act. And now we're moving to another federal act, the Clean Air Act. And that one gives states and local governments a lot of latitude to enact building or appliance emissions standards. Um, and depending on the local government's authority to regulate air pollution, a building or appliance emission standard might be an option. So, New York City, for example, has a building emissions approach. And it basically assigns a budget to the building, and it's an emissions limit that's associated with methane emissions. So they actually set it just low enough so that the building wouldn't comply with the ordinance if it used natural gas. We also have the South Coast Air Quality District and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Those are both in California. And they applied nitrogen oxide appliance standards. So they set their NOx emissions standards on a sort of falling trajectory. So we've been regulating NOx from appliances. And when I say we, I mean places in the country have been managing NOx from appliances since the 70s. So it's a pretty non-controversial issue. We did that in many parts of the country because the local areas were not in compliance with Clean Air Act requirements. So we don't typically have that problem in Oregon. We don't typically have a NOx emissions problem, but the Clean Air Act does require maintaining compliance. So it's not just if you're out of compliance, bringing you back into compliance, but rather it's acceptable to impose limitations on pollution so that you maintain compliance. So this is an idea that we pitched to Ashland, and they investigated pretty thoroughly. And I can, after this meeting, share with you the packet that the city council looked at and staff looked at to evaluate whether they wanted to impose an appliance, a pollution standard on, it would be gas furnaces and gas water heaters. The Bay Area is pushing their NOx appliance limit to 0 NOx. So effectively making gas appliances non-compliant. We would not recommend that. We don't want to draw a lawsuit, but rather you could put the NOx limit at so low that it is possible, but more expensive to comply. So Ashland was thinking about it in the context of new development, but you could also think about it as something that a policy that would be focused on both new and existing appliances. So anytime, for example, anyone needed to swap out a gas furnace for another appliance, they'd have to put in a low NOx gas furnace, which would be harder to get, a tiny bit more expensive. It might be that thing that pushes them over the edge to put in a heat pump instead. So something to think about there. I will say both the South Coast and Bay Area, they are a sale or installation policy. So you cannot sell or install a furnace or a heat pump water heater that doesn't comply with the low NOx standard. That's not a policy that will work for West Linn. You're not going to regulate the sale, right, of furnaces and water heaters, just as the small city that you are. But you could limit what goes into new development, and you could certainly limit what gets installed to replace old furnaces. Something to think about and play around with a little bit. We're always cognizant of administrative burden on city staff. And so you'd want to find a policy that's easy for them to implement. So as I said here, you take baby steps, start with the new buildings, and then you can move on to existing. That's sort of what I liked about Ashland thinking about a low NOx appliance standard, where they start with new buildings and then you kind of see how it works, and then you could expand it to existing. So this is an option.
Sorry, does the
Yeah, go ahead.
low NOx appliance standard apply? I mean, gas stoves, do they fall under that as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
great question. Yeah, so we drafted an ordinance that would kind of combine what New York City's ordinance does, sort of a building emissions ordinance, and a NOx appliance standard, and created, so I can share it with you if you're interested. It's a draft ordinance that would basically allow a developer to determine which appliances to put in to meet the budget. The tricky thing we found with gas stoves is that there isn't any regulation of gas stoves. So we don't really have a sense of what their emissions are. We have one study that does provide some information. That's what we based our ordinance on. I mean, I'd love for it to work, because you could set the budget so low that it would still be legal. You're not precluding the installation of gas appliances, right, under the Berkeley decision. But you're making it pretty difficult, and they have to pick and choose which one to put in. But that's the issue with both gas stoves and then gas fireplaces, is that we don't really have emissions profiles associated with those appliances.
But we do with gas, water heaters and gas furnaces. Okay.
Yep,
Right.
and have since the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good, reliable data, published
Mhm.
data. Yeah.
Does anyone know if this is the sort of thing that the city has some sort of like view on, or not view, but like how does the city know that somebody's replacing that kind of equipment? I don't know if Westland has a permitting system that includes those things,
Right.
and how they would know to, impose these restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you'd have to have those conversations with staff to see where is the insertion point. When Ashland was toying with it, the way we have it drafted in our model ordinance, we have basically at the point where you're getting a building permit, you'd have to identify which appliances you're putting in to the building. And that way there'd be oversight. So it's easier with new buildings. With if you were to extend it to existing appliances, it would be an imposition on the with contractors that are working in HVAC installers that are working in your city. So it would be anyone who's housed, founded, operating in West Linn, but it would presumably be pretty easy to
Uh-huh.
dock any kind of requirement.
Yeah. Okay.
So moving on, you see that EPCA again. That's the Energy Policy Conservation Act. The most common method to regulate natural gas around the nation is to use building codes. But as you know, we have a problem with actually state and federal law in Oregon. We have the problem of Berkeley in Oregon, and then we also have a statute in Oregon that requires a uniform state building code. So a couple of hurdles here. There is a provision under both EPCA and our state statute to create a building code that complies with the federal law, and that then you get approval from the state building code division to do something different. So there's a couple of hoops to jump through, but I do think it's possible, especially if you have, a city council that's interested in a little bit more control over what buildings look like. They might be interested in moving towards an EPCA compliant building code. Here is an example of Washington's. So Washington has a state building code that is EPCA compliant. And you can see here, the way that they've set it up is effectively giving credits for more efficient buildings. And it doesn't then require you or penalize you for using gas. It just makes it easier to acquire the number of credits you need, the minimum number of credits in order to be a compliant building. It makes it easier to do that if you use a heat pump. So this is an example. We haven't yet had any city in Oregon get excited about this. It would be a fair bit of work. But I do know that there would be, experts and technical experts who would be interested in assisting a local government if they wanted to go down this path. It would basically be pushing our Oregon building code division to accept a building code requirement that looks like Washington's, where you're basically incentivizing more efficient buildings using heat pumps instead of gas.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I missed the bit
Yeah.
where you said how these credits get doled out or
Yeah.
or what you do
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah. So it's not, don't think of it as like cap and trade credit or allowances or something like that. It's instead the way that Washington's building code is built. You have to have a certain number of credits in order to be compliant with the code. And this is so you can you jump through these hoops by demonstrating this is how you've done it. And it's easier than you get more credits, for example, for installing a heat pump as opposed to a furnace.
So if you wanted a house, you need at least, I don't know, what, 15, 20 credits, and then you could build it.
Yeah, whatever it is. And I'm definitely not a Washington building code expert.
And you can't
So I
sell
would
them.
lean on other folks. No, it's not like that at all. It's just
Okay,
sort of
thanks.
the points you need in order to comply. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
So then we
And
get to the
Kara-
last, yeah.
Yeah, Kara. So, yeah, going back to this for just a sec. So, when you said cities encouraging the state to adopt a building code, what would that look like? Would it just be direct advocacy, or would it be passing ordinances
Good.
that push it
Okay,
in
yeah.
that direction?
So, yeah, good question. So, what you would do, there's a regulation actually that the Building Code Division has adopted that walks through what's required in order what's called to get what's called a local amendment. So this is all identified in detail in one of our papers. Our very last slide, you'll be able to see how to find that paper.
Right.
But basically, what you would do is you would provide the ordinance that you're asking to for permission to implement locally, get this local amendment. You would submit it to the Building Code Division along with a short report, and the report would walk through all of the factors that you've met in order to get the local amendment. So it does require, for example, that you have done outreach, that you have identified objections to the policy that you're seeking admission for. And there are several other criteria you have to meet in order to qualify for a local amendment. And then the Building Code Division reviews it and accepts it or not. So that's how that process works. It's not used very often. And I think if you were interested in this, it would be best to be set up, have conversations with the head of the Building Code Division so that we could kind of talk through what that process looks like and be prepared.
Interesting. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll move on to the pollution fee. So this is really, kind of, I would say, a last resort. It is the easiest in some ways. And it complies with the notion, and Rob knows this, that notion that if you break it, you buy it. Or if you spill it, you clean it up. So I think of a climate or a pollution fee as being really useful layered on with other policies. And you'd want to be thoughtful about what you hope to achieve with a pollution fee. Do you want it to generate revenue, or do you want it to disincentivize behavior? And then just remembering that you don't want to be overly reliant on the revenue that you're generating, right? So that you're not sort of feeding a need for the pollution. Sort of think about it like the cigarette tax, where it seems like are perfectly fine allowing the use of cigarettes if we're still collecting taxes on it. But it is possible. So I was thinking, as you were talking about your sustainability, you don't have anyone, right, in your city doing sustainability. And Milwaukee, for example, raised their license fee on utilities in order to fund their sustainability person. So it can be, I think, really useful to think about how to whom are you directing the fee? How are you collecting it? What is it? What are you hoping to achieve with the revenue that you're raising?
Kara,
Yeah.
so Milwaukee, do they have anything besides water that they charge a fee for that they could add
Yeah.
on?
So they have Northwest Natural and PGE serving their, so it's not just, so you as a city have the right to raise fees on the utilities using your right of ways.
Oh,
So that is a way for you to generate revenue. Now, remember that increase in the license fee is going to trickle down to the folks using the service. So it's certainly top of mind for city administrators where they're thinking about burden on residents. But I mean, something to consider is raising just the fees on natural gas users.
right. That was the first thing I thought of. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And if you're interested in that, you might get pushback, sort of this notion of discrimination. You know, Northwest Natural will certainly pull that out as you're discriminating against us. And there's ample case law that we can point to where the city just needs to have a rational basis for the discrimination. And here it would be, you know, climate change, wanting to reduce the use of fossil fuel use. And even better if you have a climate action plan to point to where you're hoping to achieve, you know, certain goals. And this helps you do that.
We have that.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's lots of different ways to think about raising revenue. You could, you know, tax business income of large companies. So that's like what Portland does with its PSEF. You couldn't do exactly what Portland does because that's been preempted in state law, but you could do something similar. You could tax natural gas usage. You could tax natural gas based pollution. So the city of Burlington has an interesting model to consider. And then, of course, I believe Greg passed around Ashland's pollution fee. And the idea with Ashland's pollution fee is really as a choice modifier as opposed to a revenue raiser. It's just not going to produce very much revenue, right? And if it works, it maybe won't produce any revenue. And that's a good thing. The idea is just influence customer behavior. So you are eliminating the what is it called? You're basically you're leveling the playing field, right? Because the gas is so subsidized already that you're taking away that benefit that it has. So the way Ashlands works, as I said, you know, we started on a path of NOx emissions. And so we provided them our model ordinance, and they took pieces of that model ordinance so that when a developer applies for a building permit, they have to identify the gas appliances that they intend to install. And then there's a fee that's assigned for each appliance that they install. And it's based on their average carbon emissions times the social cost of carbon. And the social cost of carbon they used is not the politically adopted social cost of carbon, but rather the figure that's in the report that scientists provided to EPA. So heavily vetted report identifying what the social cost of carbon is for, and in this case, it was for 2024 when they adopted the fee. So that's the way that they've done it, and they intend to collect those fees if gas appliances are installed. The fees will be directed to, they have an electric municipal utility, so Ashland Municipal Electric, and the fees will be directed to a fund to assist low-income customers with their energy bills. So you might be thinking about okay, what does Berkeley say about this, that Ninth Circuit opinion? And we don't have anything in the majority opinion itself, except the language indicating it's a very narrow decision just based on the facts in front of it. But here we have a concurring opinion. So that's an opinion that one of the judges issued, basically agreeing with the analysis that the majority set out, but adding some additional tidbits. And so here they say, nothing in that federal law in the text or structure suggests any concern with state and local taxes that might reduce consumption of natural gas. So there we go. State and local governments are likely free to impose carbon taxes designed to discourage such consumption. So that's what Ashland's fee is really focused on. It'll go into place next year. And as far as we know, there haven't been any threats of litigation. They could have sued by now. They could also wait until it goes into place. I would just urge you to not stop at a fee, but think about overlapping policies. So you could, for example, require new construction to install ultra low NOx appliances, and then also impose a pollution fee if they choose to do so, right? Because they could choose to electrify instead. And then this is my last slide, just sort of the ways in which you could layer the policies on top of each other. And I think Ashland, I know Ashland advocates are really focused on what is the next step for the city. They're really excited that a pollution impact fee went into place. They're excited to see what happens with it. And I know other cities are looking at it, which is also great. And it's not enough. We probably need more. And then here's where you can find our publications, and I'm happy to put them in the chat too. One is this regulating natural gas in Oregon buildings. And Rob, that's where you'll see the good information about how do you apply for a local amendment with the Oregon's Building Code Division. And the other one is funding building decarbonization. So that's focused just on some of the ways in which local governments can impose fees.
Very cool. Thank you.
So that's what you got.
Hey,
Did you stick with me the whole time? Did anyone fall
Yeah.
asleep?
no,
Thank
this
you.
is cool.
It's really fascinating
here.
just to
Thank
see
you.
the variety of different directions that this can take. So, just you really expanded my sense of what Ashland could potentially do after this first step. Yeah, it's very helpful. I guess one of my questions,
Yeah, one thing you should think about with, I want to go back to the sort of ultra low NOx appliance standard. If you wanted to go that way, one thing people often will say to me is, well, doesn't DEQ manage air quality for our state? Don't they handle air pollution? And yes, except they only manage stationary sources. So the big, more, larger industrial sources of pollution, they aren't addressing the pollution from appliances. And so back to, where we started with preemption, if we had an occupy the field preemption, right, we would say DEQ occupies the field, but we don't have that preemption in Oregon. So you can do anything you want so long as DEQ isn't doing it, and they aren't doing it. Yeah.
Neat.
But you might hear, well, isn't that the county's job, right? Because counties do have specific statutory authority for health and safety. And I would just say that nothing you would be doing would preclude the county from doing something too. And just because the county has specific statutory authority doesn't mean you don't have authority to do it.
The county has no capacity to sort of limit city ordinances. Yeah, good. Okay. So what if, I always think of for OLCV, I sit on the candidate vetting committee. So we last selection, we spent a lot of time with folks from Lake Oswego, even though a lot of them didn't have competition. But long and short of it is, it's pretty clear their city council and certainly Frank Buck is, those are folks who at least give a lot of lip service to being interested in pursuing these sorts of things. I'm always curious if you get two cities, adjoining cities, sort of joining together on this kind of effort, does it really? Yeah, it does. Okay, so it helps. I mean, I'm sure you'd have to figure out ways to ensure that the ordinances are coherent with their sort of underlying legal norms.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, we have definitely on a number of occasions, cities, especially folks who aren't in the leadership role, in the council role, say, well, wouldn't it be great if we, acted together? And I have said that and encouraged cities to adopt the same or similar ordinance. So then if you're sued, you could you could be represented by one entity. And to that end, I'll just say that I've spoken with funders who have an interest in pulling together funding if cities want to act. So keep that in your back pocket. Don't announce that at a city council meeting. But if you're having conversations with city councilors who are like, well, I'm afraid of getting sued, cities, I will say, don't always want the help. Ashland in particular was like, yeah, we know what we're doing. We're taking an action that might get us sued. And we don't really want to hand our defense off to anyone else. Thank you very much. We're taking the risk. Right. And so that may be your city too, but to the extent it helps sort of get anyone over the ledge, I think it's useful. Ashland is not in Northwest Natural Territory. They are in Avista territory. And Avista, in a rate case earlier this year, settled with us and they agreed to do a voluntary electrification pilot. So they are seeing the writing on the wall. They are exactly. I see your eyes opening wide. They are a tiny utility in Southern Oregon. They've got bigger fish to fry elsewhere. They see that there's an opportunity actually for them to make some money, because we're thinking about it as how do we get the gas utility to be a partner here? And they can't sell methane anymore. We can't have them sell methane. And we don't want them to sell hydrogen or be blending hydrogen or the nonsense of carbon capture. I mean, all of it is absurd, right? And so expensive. But if we could get them on board with helping rebate, right? Provide rebates, and then they earn some rate of return on that rebate, we're all winners there, right? If we get some folks, especially where otherwise they would be investing in very expensive pipe that we would be paying off for 30 to 50 years. Now, Northwest Natural is not that company. Northwest Natural is digging in heels hardcore. You guys, you should see this rate case we're in. 40 pages about how building electrification isn't the answer. And it's so absurd. We're like handing them on a silver platter, please do thermal energy networks. We'll figure out how to get you paid, right? Like think about Lewis and Clark on a thermal energy network. Yeah, U of O, yes, please, let's do it and get you paid, because otherwise we're paying you for your storage at Mist, and that's not useful. So, but they're not into it.
Are they opposing?
So all that to say, they will likely sue.
So is Northwest Natural opposing SB 1143?
Is that the TENS bill?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that the TENS bill,
yeah.
Rob? Yeah. So what they've told, what I understand they've told Climate Solutions is, we'll support it if you'll back off of Junkin rates.
Yeah.
So it's a swap, right? Which is so dumb because they have an opportunity to make money with the TENS. Yeah. So.
Yep.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Sorry, what is the TENS?
Thermal
you want to say,
energy
Rob?
networks. Yeah, Carrie, you can explain it better. No, that's right. You go ahead. You can probably do this better than I can.
I mean, sure, Rob, fix me. So think of district heating. I mean, it is like, it's what's old is new again. So on the East Coast in particular, and there are some places actually in Oregon that do have this where they're basically connecting by pipe heating and cooling buildings with water. But you're using or heat pumps, ground source heat pumps. So there's different ways, different configurations. And there's several pilots in Massachusetts and California. As I said, we actually already have district heating in a retirement community in, I think it's in maybe Albany. So it's, you're not, it's very efficient. You're not heavily reliant on the grid, and it doesn't use any methane. Instead, you're just using water, and you're moving water between houses or campuses. Like so, instead of a big boiler, right? You're heating with water in a
Okay.
residence hall.
What do
Thank
they
you.
typically use to heat
Yeah.
the water? They do that electrically, or do they
I think it's
still burn fossil
yeah.
fuels?
No fossil fuels. I mean, so you could. I mean, theoretically, it's technology neutral, but the idea is to have it be carbon free. Yeah. So using heat pump. Yeah.
So one of my questions about pursuing an initiative like this is that the likelihood of significant housing construction happening in West Lynn is pretty low, in part because the city's essentially built out. So the new housing will either be like with that waterfront development, but even that would be restricted, and then infill. And so, because of the fact that this is likely to be a pretty controversial thing to actually pursue in a community like this, like, do you have a sense about like whether it would even make sense to kind of raise the issue? I think there could be some utility in terms of just kind of replicating what Ashland has done and being another community in the state that is kind of following suit. But at the same time, its ultimate impact in terms of affecting the amount of carbon that's going into the atmosphere will be very slight. So,
Greg, you're totally right. Yeah, pros and cons. I mean, that's certainly the tally that Ashland did. They have so few really gas furnaces going in. Most people are installing heat pumps. But it is the discussion,
mhm,
the conversation that's happening in the community, the recognition um, of greenhouse gases associated with appliances,
mhm,
and I think youth in particular got really excited about a fund that could assist low income customers.
mhm,
But yes, there are policies that make more sense.
mhm,
If you could, it is a bit about reading the room. What is your city capable of?
mhm,
And maybe the first step is really thinking about raising money for a sustainability person.
mhm,
Um, but also certainly digging into your climate action plan,
mhm,
and starting to think about how do we implement some of these things with really
mhm,
a careful eye on natural gas.
mhm,
Um, the thing about Northwest Natural is that it's very insidious, right? It is a good community partner. It will support community organizations that you will be surprised that it supports.
mhm,
And that you're surprised that those folks take money from them. But they have money to share, and they do
uh-huh,
it because they know then that they're a good community partner that makes it hard to
mhm,
get rid of them.
uh-huh.
Um, so, a policy is useful.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's useful.
Yeah, I'm
And a
I'm in,
climate fee, I mean, maybe you could toy with, um, I don't know if there's a way for you to toy with furnace replacement.
Mhm,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
that's
know. What
where
do you
I
think,
think
Rob?
I mean, I think appliance replacement, as well as finding ways to, and you've talked about a couple of these, so the EPCA stuff is interesting, and finding ways to disincentivize continued use of gas where it really is a pointless use of gas. To use a case in point, there's a development across the street from us that wasn't here when we first moved here 23 years ago. Big Randy Sebastian development. Every house has a front light that's gas powered. It's just nuts. It's crazy.
What?
Yes, they are everyone.
Are you joking me?
Yes, it's a gas flame.
A light?
Yep. Not all of them are running. Some of them have turned them off, but I suspect somewhere in their community.
Goodness, they even make bulbs
They're-
these days
yeah,
that look
so-
like fake flames.
Too much.
Yes, but these are
Oh my
gas.
God, that sucks.
Yeah, it's amazing. But it,
Yeah,
it's
you
an
know
instance
what
where
I think actually might be really interesting for you guys is Berkeley. Berkeley has a new ordinance, and it is essentially upon sale requires that the house be decarbonized. So I wonder if that kind of policy might actually be more productive. I'll find it and send it to you guys.
Yeah, that sounds really
That-
interesting.
There's
Yeah.
going to be a whole lot more houses being bought and sold than new housing
Yeah.
going in. Yeah, it seems like the new housing going in would work better in, say, Gresham or Beaverton and Aloha, those areas, than here, because we're stretching the boundaries, pushing up against them. But that idea. I mean, how would you have that not be discriminatory?
Mhm.
Say,
Yeah.
if you're going to sell your house, but that's part of code.
right.
Mhm.
Of course, we know what.
Yeah, no, there's nothing discriminatory about it. I mean, it's like when you're selling your house, there are all kinds of,
You
to
check the roof.
report.
the
Exactly.
foundation,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
put it in with that.
New
Uh,
roof. Yeah.
We know that the city.
Okay, it looks like
Okay.
I need permission to share this.
Oh,
Turned
and
off chat.
Dylan is off somewhere.
That's okay. I'll follow
Yeah.
up. I'll send it to
You can
Rob
just
right
send
now.
it to me,
Rob
then
and
I'll send it
Greg.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
So
Any
I
other
will
questions?
be. I was just going to say I will be giving a presentation on the 16th, I think, and I can send that to you about Berkeley's ordinance.
oh, great.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll be recorded.
Uh-huh.
Oh, very cool.
Rob, is your L. Clark still good?
Yeah, it is. That's my address. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
This has been very interesting.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly opened up my ideas to possibilities I'd never considered. So that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, and then one of you, if you have capacity, we do have a group of local government and sustainability folks that join, I think, a meeting every 2 weeks, I want to say, and talk just about what policies they're considering. So if you're interested, I can send you that invite just for you to watch and listen and take information back.
Yeah,
Good.
that'd be great. Please.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Well, thank you very much. And hope you have some good meals in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna head out right
Are you
now and
2 or
go
3
watch
hours
some
ahead?
jazz.
Right.
2.
That's good. Well, and thank you
Okay.
for speaking with us so late, since it must be 10 o'clock for you.
Not
Oh, 9.
9.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not
9.
so
Yep,
bad.
I thought it
yep.
was.
So
Not too
So-
bad. Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
But I'm gonna go hear some jazz music, so I gotta power
Excellent.
through.
Great. Hey, thank you very much.
All
This is
right.
terrific.
Well, thank you.
Great.
It really
Thank you.
All right.
delightful.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for all you do. Really appreciate it.
Mm.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Claire.
Okay.
Oh, that was great.
It was.
Yeah. Has anyone on the council ever expressed any openness to trying to regulate and decrease natural gas consumption in the city?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
When she said you could have it in the code, suddenly thought, oh my God, there's so much trouble just to change the tree code. How would
Yeah.
they? It would just be pulling teeth to try to get them to change the building code. But
It's probably a long project, but it's I mean, it's just part of it, I think, is we may not cut a lot of emissions, but for instance, if you're working in partnership with Lake Oswego, it's expressing a set of values in as much as it gets news coverage. People see what the two cities
Yeah.
are doing.
Yeah, it's worthwhile.
It is grassroots at its best. Yeah, in its best form.
and I have a feeling that if people in this city say, "Oh, well, Lake Oswego's doing it, we should do that too."
Yeah. Yeah. Or gas blowers. That's sort of shifted from Lake Oswego to West Linn, I think. But at any rate, yeah, very good.
So would the idea be to try to digest what we just learned and have a conversation with council about this? It's like, I don't want this information to just kind of stop with us.
No, I think it really needs to go to council. So I think we should, now that we've learned more, have a conversation among ourselves at, let's say, our August meeting.
Okay.
Share what we've learned with other members, and it might mean actually sitting down and talking with them once we get the minutes, and then try to have a conversation to basically address the question that you just asked, Mike. Do we want to take this forward? Does it make sense to do this? And I think from the standpoint of carbon emissions, probably it doesn't make much difference. But I think Rob's point and the point that Kara made in terms of just educating the public and getting more people actually thinking about carbon emissions and the use of carbon fuels would have its value.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited about the possibility. Yeah, good.
It is 10 after 7 already. I think we should move on. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay, we will not.
And I've got a 7:30 kind of commitment, so I'll have to leave at 7:30.
Okay, that's all right. We always try to do that. I would like to briefly go over Dylan's answers for 2 meetings ago, because he had to leave the last meeting. So we asked him about the tree inventory, and he said that he had already mailed this to everybody. We asked him about the possibilities for grants. He said this was also emailed as part of the packet for the last meeting. We asked if he was working with the mayor to schedule a meeting with the developers for EV charging, and the news is it's installed. So it's a great beginning.
Well,
Yeah,
one
happy
is
to see that
installed, but
email
I'm
from
not
him.
sure whether it was installed in conjunction with other community business people.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. This was the first one, and that one. So his answer, I'll read it. He says, the mayor did speak with some commercial development representatives. It sounded like they had mixed feelings about EVs being a good business decision, parentheses, ongoing service and maintenance, if it actually drove more businesses, etc. And they weren't willing to tackle this without incentives from the city or assistance in finding and writing grants. So he says, we will keep our eye out for grants and approach them again at that time. If any SAB members become aware of a grant that might fit a public-private partnership, let me know.
Okay.
All right, so Dylan, we asked him about using the last $3,000, and he says the memo provided from Parametrics does provide an action plan for the next few years, and they're now working on finding specific grants for the city. The last thing was, do we want to put the leaf blower issue back on our radar? He says, I don't recall getting much feedback from the group on this. It remains a hot topic in the community. I have asked Lake Oswego to keep us updated on their progress on that. And could we possibly partner with them on a regional approach, as that would be most equitable and logical given the many challenges to implementing a ban, as in some of the community have requested. Parametrics is scheduled to present to council on June 18th. And it's possible this topic could come up then, as some on council have interest.
A couple of things that I can add to this. Roberto got in touch with a woman at the State Forestry Department that Megan had suggested speaking with in terms of involving students in a tree inventory. And so she was actually pretty enthusiastic about it. And so, so Roberto will be planning to meet with her. I sent a letter to Jeff Bingham at the high school to see whether he might be conceivably interested in helping out with something like that next year, but told him since it's the end of the school year, if he gets back to me in the next couple of weeks, that would be great. So I wasn't expecting a reply back quickly. So that's moving forward in its own way. I did go to a meeting of the landscaping committee of the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network on Friday last week. They're not really particularly interested at the moment in doing more of the landscaping tool fairs, but they give me the name of a man from Steel, who the company that makes these appliances and landscaping tools. And he apparently has been interested in speaking with other groups about that. What I know that Megan has had people speak with the landscaping folks in the Parks Department about converting to electrical tools. And so they're knowledgeable about it. I think if we're interested, we can approach this guy and see whether he would be interested in speaking at some kind of public event. The issue is trying to figure out how we could actually create a public event that draws more than a handful of people to make it worth his while to come. So that's where things stand on that. One of the things that I did learn from Lake Oswego, in addition to sending that piece that I sent you, is that they have manufactured these signs about grass feed landscaping. So if people have actually kind of adopted primarily battery powered tools to do their yard work, you can put up this sign thanks to the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network.
Okay.
I should grab one of those.
Yeah, there were about actually 9 or 10 people at that meeting. They're really fired up. They're kind of fed up with gas powered leaf blowers. But it was interesting, and so there's a lot of data that they collected, and I don't know if you looked at the piece that I sent to you from Durham that they had distributed among folks, which is. Yeah, it's strongly worded and interesting. Like whoever is working on that issue in Durham is not afraid of controversy.
I have something to add to that. Megan sent an email back to Dylan and Greg and me about discussing students in the inventory. And she said she had reached out to Lake Oswego, who suggested that we connect with Brittany at the Oregon Department of Forestry.
And that's who Roberta connected with.
Okay, good. All right.
And the other thing that Megan had said, or something I think that she had said before, was having students initially really focus on trees in city parks, particularly oaks or Oregon ash, that are susceptible to disease, that are quick acting and very destructive. So I guess we'll just see where it goes and see what Roberto learns from Brittany. And hopefully, Jeff will be interested in possibly taking this on.
Jeff?
Jeff Bingham.
Oh, thank you.
High school teacher.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in our 10 minutes that remain,
I have one quick comment that relates to just something we might let council know with respect to trying to regulate gas appliances. I'm not a medical expert here, but I saw a little while ago, looks like somebody published something in early May talking about how the use of gas stoves in homes significantly increases lifetime cancer risk for children.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's
And
been out there for a while.
yeah, people don't.
Yeah.
I think if that was more widely known, we might get
Uh-huh.
more traction with this.
Hmm.
And it might help council to, if they want to take up this issue, that could
Uh-huh.
be included in the list of whereases that they put in the front of all their ordinances.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, I'm gonna move to t-shirts briefly, and I sent an email asking you all for your sizes if you want to send those back. I've heard from 2 or 3 of you, so that's fine. Won't do that here. I don't think we have time to revisit our 2025 goals,
Mm-mm.
so we'll wait till August for that. But I'll just put it on the agenda for August.
And what about just details in terms of planning for the old time fair?
Yes, that
Like
was on
who's
my,
going to set up, who's going to do stuff when, et cetera.
yeah, that was on my list of questions. I'm reaching for something hard that I can write on. I don't remember who said they'd sign up for which time slots, and we're only doing it Saturday, right?
Sunday, I think.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. I can't remember.
I don't think we did sign up for time slots.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Yes, okay, no. I do not have, I was hoping it's Saturday.
I think we had determined that it was going to be Sunday. Is that other people's understanding?
Because I have tickets to go to a play on Sunday, but I could do it a different time slot.
At this
So,
point, I
yeah,
don't remember the conversation, but Sunday would work for
I
me at
can't-
least.
I can't find it in my notes.
Yeah,
It would be, I don't know if it even showed up in the minutes.
yeah, I don't remember any but might have been after I left at my first meeting. But
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna have to send out an email asking people.
Actually, look back through, I think it was pretty much an email discussion. So look
Mhm.
back through the emails at the timing. And my recollection is that for most people, Sunday was going to work better because of conflicts on Saturdays. And when the garden club had asked, given my recollection of that, I had suggested that they join us on Sunday.
Yeah, okay, then I guess Sunday it is, if that's the day they're gonna join us.
But they could also do Saturday. But I look back through those notes.
I found the email chain. It looks like the last,
I missed that.
let's see here. The last one, so Kate said that
Do you have a date?
yeah, March 26th.
Oh, okay.
Victoria, you said, hi, Mike, you and I are both flexible on the dates. Let's just divvy up the 2 days between us. There are 5 people who've responded in 2 days available. I can go on Sunday with Roberto and Dan if you can take Saturday with Greg.
Right, but then when we talked about it in a meeting, it shifted. We must have
So,
talked about it in April then.
it was at the April meeting. The YouTube videos that they post include transcripts. And so, but those are searchable as well. So streamed 3 weeks ago. That would have been the May meeting.
No, it would have been the April one,
Okay, let's try that one then.
which is
Transcript.
April 17. Just as a backup, if we can't find all this, let's just say, okay, Sunday, and of the 4 of us here, does anybody remember what times the shifts were?
They're totally up to us. We just create them. But I think on Sunday, because of the fact that other people are going to be there in the morning, we probably are going to want to go between 10 o'clock to probably 5 or 6 o'clock on Sunday and
Okay,
divide that time up.
that's 8 hours.
And do we have responsibility to set up and take down or anything?
That's what
Yeah.
we're aiming
Well,
for.
that's what we need to talk about because we're the ones who set up and take down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could
two
help out at the
teams.
end of the day on Sunday to help take down. I mean, cover some of those
Okay.
last hours and help take down.
So
And I
two
think what we did
teams
last year
for
was
4
just bring our
hours.
canopy, chairs, etc. So I can just bring that down to set up and take down.
12 to 2. Okay, so 10 to 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. There'll be some overlap that way, and 4 o'clock to 6 or
Yeah.
7.
Sure.
Then everybody's
sure.
got 3 hours, but each one overlaps by an hour. I don't know. That way it's a little generous, and you can leave a little early if you need to, or
Mhm.
Yep.
yeah. That's my first suggestion.
Yeah. Do you want to just send around a sign up?
Yeah.
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 Sounds good.
Yeah. Happy to jump on that. So.
All right. So you're going to send it around?
Oh no, I say,
If
yeah,
you want to.
Happy to
I
get a
can.
shift.
So I mean, so tell me again, what are we?
No, you don't have to, Rob. It's okay.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
gonna
You don't
say-
want to count it. You don't want to count me for administrative stuff. Yes, Victoria, send around the sign up, and we'll. What I said was, we'll take a
Okay,
shift.
if you don't mind, it's just an email. I don't feel like doing anything fancy right now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, just
what?
here are the slots and reply all with.
Mike?
How many people do we need at a
And a
at a
shift.
time?
It's usually good to have 2.
Yeah, 2 is nice. It makes
Yeah.
it much more interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
I,
if we have
I-
3 shifts,
Yeah. Are you okay with the shifts overlapping? Otherwise, it's just going to be 6 hours.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Overlap them. That's fine.
yeah.
Mike, were you going to try to say something?
Yeah, so I went and looked at the March, April, and May meetings on YouTube, and presuming that it's at least mostly capturing our conversations correctly, the words Saturday, Sunday, fair, and weekend did not come up in any of them. So I don't know if we talked about it in the meetings. I don't think I was not there for the March meeting, but I was for the April and the May. But
Well, we'll
I
just
don't
have to
remember
redo it.
talking about the shifts
We didn't talk about shifts. It was
or
day.
just like even days.
I
Yeah.
think we just said what time of day. I swear that we did, but it's just we'll have to do it again. It's okay.
Okay, so actually here, so 10 to 1, and then an overlap 12 to 3.
No.
But it,
Oh yeah, 12 to 3. Thank you.
yeah, and then there really wouldn't be because it ends at 6, right?
And then it would be 4 to
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it does end at 6. So
So if it ends
6.
at 6, we wouldn't have an overlap for the last group.
Yeah.
It would be 3 to 6, but at least 2. And I actually have an email ready to go here.
I
Awesome.
think in the past years we've often packed up before everything ends just to beat the traffic.
2 to 5 then. So 10 to
Um,
1, 12 to 3, and
2 to
2
5.
to 5.
2 to 5. Yeah.
Oh, boy, there we go.
If there's
Okay,
more
I
than
have
2
to
of
do
us
the-
there at a time, it might look like
Yeah, maybe too
community
many of us
interest.
there at a time. Yeah.
I have to do the 10 to 1 because I have tickets at 2:30 to go to a play with friends.
And I can take a 2 to 5 slot.
Okay, I can do any of
Do
them,
you want me
so
to?
I can just hold off until.
Victoria, do you want?
Well, why don't I do, I could be a person who comes both at the first piece to kind of set up and then to take down. So I won't be, I'll come like an hour and a half, both of those times, but a half hour before and a half hour at the end.
That's just great. And I can come a little early before 10 to help set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll
Do
just-
we know?
So what I have right now is Victoria.
Good.
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, it's Mike.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was just gonna ask a question about equipment if we have that covered too. Tables, a canopy.
Last time, Greg, you brought your
I
table.
was just gonna bring what we've got. If anybody else has a bigger table, that would be helpful.
I brought one last time. I don't remember if it was bigger than yours or not.
I think we used two, so go ahead and bring yours, I'll bring mine,
Oh,
and
that'll prompt me to work on that project that's all over the table. Okay. And you have a tarp tent cover shade tarp?
well, what I have is a canopy.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
That'll-
yeah, I'll just bring that.
So, yeah. Oh, and then there are all the pamphlets and things. We've had a box of those for a while.
Yeah, I still have a few. We'll need to find some more.
Okay, it's 7:30.
Yeah, my
we-
rehearsal is here, so I gotta go meet my cellist, so.
We've almost got that covered. We'll finish it off with emails, and thank you all.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye all. Goodbye, Rob.